Hey guys, Saloon here. In this episode of Zero to Keystone Master, we're gonna learn the difference between whetstone and weight-stone. What do you mean this is an invalid item? What? Witness a mage dying to hentai?
I'm dying. Help me.
Getting wrecked in Siege of Boralus? Oh well, at least I was not the only one who died to that. And entering the dungeon I feared the most, City of Threats. So get ready for episode 2 of Zero to Keystone Master as Survival Hunter. I feel like I'm too late to the party already. Every other person I know who does Zero to Hero or KSM uploaded their latest episode on Friday. Mine are going to be on Sundays. By the way, by others I meant Cussy Slayer, Vesperal TV, and Dillison. I've been an avid viewer of them for over a year now, and I've been heavily inspired by them to start my own journey. I put links to their channels into the description, please check them out. We start this week by opening our vault. We had only 2 choices, and while the ring was decent, picking the hero chest was a no-brainer, as it was an upgrade to hero track from veteran. This week I'm skipping majority of weekly quests and activities. I'm only going to do 2, and those are both related to the Burning Crusade time walking. You can complete both quests at once by doing the Black Temple time walking raid, and the quests reward you with a hero cache from Black Temple, and the other rewards you with a champion cache from Nerubar Palace. The time walking raid is pretty easy, as it scales everyone's gear and level down, so it's perfect for fresh level 80s. From the 3rd boss, I looted champion gloves with crit verse, which was a huge upgrade as I had 550 gloves still, and towards the end I got a champion helmet which was also crit verse, but it's still a nice upgrade instead of the veteran helmet I had, and that was it for raid drops. From the hero cache I got a hero haste verse ring, which is pretty bad for us, and the champion chest gave us Sikran's Endless Arsenal trinket, which is pretty okay. It's not the best in slot, but it's okay. The downside now is that I have double unused trinkets, which I personally really hate. I can also assure you that for the first dungeon I totally forgot to put it on my bars again. Classic me. After time walking, I went to catalyze my helmet or gloves. They both had the same stats, but I checked what the stats would become after converting, and we really want to chase mastery, so the helmet was the best decision, and it also had a socket. And with that, we have 4 set now. Before I started doing dungeons, I bought some of the cheaper enchants, gems and some consumables, where mistakes were made. You'll see why in a moment. Speaking of mistakes, remember last week I was using a suboptimal talent build. This week we fixed that and ran a proper Mythic Plus build. I was missing Fury of the Eagle mostly, which is a channeled ability that hits everything in a cone, does more damage to targets below 20%, and deals reduced damage beyond 5 targets. I for sure need to improve more on using this ability because I felt like I was sitting on it often for no reason. First dungeon this week is a +3 Grim Batol with, I assume, French people? At least La Clairvoyant. Sounds very French to me. Before we started, I found out the hard way that I should learn to read. What do you mean this is an invalid item? What? Oh, right. This week's affix is Xalatath's Bargain, Voidbound. There will be an emissary summoned that we have to kill, otherwise it will start putting a stacking damage reduction on enemies, but when we kill it, we get crit and reduced cooldown rate. It's a fairly simple affix. Early in the dungeon, we have to ride dragons that help us kill or get some trash packs on low HP. To my knowledge, you want to focus the first pack with the Twilight Destroyer in it, and the last pack before the boss that has the double Overseers. The pack before boss went down, but the Twilight Destroyer was not even close. We got off the dragons, and then this happens.
Bye, have a great time.
I love people forgetting about Umbra wins. First boss died easily, and so did the second. On the way to the third boss, the shaman decided to inspect the floor for a second after getting hit by the frontal. On the third boss, the tank decided he does not want to kill the lava benders, and I thought that was an insane decision, and somehow, by some miracle, we managed to avoid pulling those, but man, I think that's crazy to do in a pug. 9 out of 10 times, somebody will pull those for sure. Before the last boss, the shaman inspected the floor once again after getting mind controlled. The last boss was a mess. The mage and the shaman could not resist the hand tie. Even though I used turtle to clear out a lot in the middle, it was still somehow very enticing to ride those tentacles and die. The shaman anks, and the mage says what I assume means in French that he blinked into one. He got rezzed as well. The mage died towards the end to hand tie again. Despite all this, we still managed to +2 this key, giving us a score of 189, which brings us to 724 and no loot. Next dungeon will be Siege of Boralus +4, but before that, I finally sorted out my misdirection. I realized it's off the global cooldown, so I decided to macro it into some of my abilities, so it will go off automatically at every pull when it's off cooldown, as long as I have the tank selected as focus target, otherwise it will go on my pet. This dungeon was very rocky. After the second trash pack, the tank got literally shredded to pieces. I tried my best to stay alive. Sadly, we couldn't kill the shredder before it killed the red pally as well. Not long after, the evoker went down because he pulled aggro, but at least the boss went down easily. I cannot say the same about the second boss. We almost vibed here, but I'll just let this clip speak for itself. So yeah, I'll admit I panicked and didn't realize those swirlies were already there. I thought we will vibe when the paladin took his sweet time to res the healer first instead of the tank, and then eventually res both, so they finished the boss. The next set of trash felt horrible as a melee. They were constantly swirlies going on, frontals, fear, and stupid bananas. Was not fun at all. Thankfully, the last two bosses died without any issues. The healer did a good job on the last boss with the dispels, making sure we aren't eating each other. Despite all the difficulties, we managed to +2 this key as well, giving us a score of 216, taking us to a total of 940. And no loot. The next key was my own key, which was an Ara-Kara +2. There is not much to say about this key. The only interesting thing was the shaman dying because he was probably in the zone and forgot about his surroundings. That was the only death we had. We +3'd this key, giving us a score of 180, which took us to 1120. I got a champion crit verse club that nobody wanted. And that's all I had time for that day, so I called it there. The next day after, I did one singular delve because I got a map last week and it gave us a hero track shadow binding ritual knife, which is a really good trinket for us. This was the best possible drop here for sure. I simmed it so I knew which trinket to get rid of, and it was time to say goodbye to the quick candlestick. Now I have only one unused trinket again. The first key of the day is a mist +4. The first pull of the dungeon felt amazing. I was blasting, and I must say I really enjoy survival so far. It's not super easy, but it's not hard either. I'd say it's medium difficulty spec. I'm not good at it by all means. I know for sure my rotation is a bit all over the place, but I enjoy how the spec plays. If you never gave survival a chance before because it was always perceived badly, you should definitely give it a try now because it feels great to play. The only interesting thing in this key was the visual bug we got at the end that almost cost us from re-trusting this key, but me and the priest realized that in time that this is just visual and finished the key. I earned 220 score for this dungeon, taking us to 1340 and a champion verse mastery belt that I didn't need. For the next dungeon we are returning to Necrotic Wake, but on a +4 this time. Before we even entered the dungeon, the key holder shared with us his master plan, where he asked the tank to not pull big and that he's going to last first boss. I could immediately tell that this tank was for sure a lot more experienced than the DK in last episode +2. We killed the first boss easy, and now I quickly want to talk about the weapons in this dungeon. As I mentioned before, I usually play with a guild group where someone just tells me, "Oh Sal, can you pick up this weapon and use it here?" or when I tell you. And I just do it. But in PUG, of course, there is nobody you can rely on, so you have to know this stuff for yourself. And I didn't. So for the pack before bridge, apparently an orb should be used, and none of us did. The healer pointed it out, and then the mage agrees, and I love how he carried on without picking the orb that was right next to him. He was even jumping around it. If he really knew what to do, he would have picked it up. But anyway, I ended up picking it up because nobody else seemed to care. The paladin used his orb on the next pack, and I used mine right after. There was one more orb left, but the tank skipped the last necromancer pack, so I saved the orb for the first set of heads on the boss, which I felt like worked out nicely. But please let me know in the comments if you know a more optimal use for these. I also had a spear that I used on the last boss. We +2'd the key with only 14 seconds left, which gave us a score of 37, which took us to 1377 and no loot. The last dungeon for the week was a City of Threads +3. I cannot express how much I hate this dungeon. I think this is easily the worst dungeon ever designed. My hatred may stem from the fact that I started this expansion out as a Shadow Priest, and my god, so far both the raid and this season's dungeons felt super caster unfriendly to me, but this dungeon takes the cake. Every boss in this godforsaken place feels the same. Stack in melee, move constantly. First boss, stack in melee, dodge frontal, dodge balls, move together. Second boss, dodge frontals, stack on tank. Third boss, stack in melee, get knocked back, collect balls, move out on shit on the floor, move together. Last boss, stack on tank, move together, dodge swirlies, dodge circle, dodge tank mechanic, get rooted, and it just feels so shit being a caster, especially in this dungeon. Then of course we have the worst gimmick ever, the search for spies thing. I already thought in heroic version of this dungeon how much of a colossal waste of time this is. If you thought the Court of Stars RP was bad, this is like on another level with how dumb patrolling guards RNG can be as well. On my Survival Hunter here, this dungeon was not too difficult. There was one death on the last boss and that was it. We two-chested this key and I got a crit-worse snack that nobody wanted. We got a score of 193 out of this dungeon, taking us to 1570. And that's where we end this week. This was a nice week where we got some really good trinkets. We have 4 set and reached 1570 score. Next week I got a second item crafted with embellishment and I'd like to tackle 7s and 8s. Depending on how next week will go, I'm tempted to carry on this challenge till 2500, as in Keystone Hero, but we'll see how I feel once I reached KSM. For now, I thank you all very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode and don't forget to subscribe if you do. I'll see you next week. Bye bye.